Hello and welcome to my review of Mox by Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley is a professional wrestler, if you did not know that. This is his book, released in like 2021. Going into this book, I wasn't the biggest Jon Moxley fan, but after reading it, I feel like I'm more of a fan of his, and I have more respect for his work. He's kind of interesting. He has some interesting stories to tell in the book. He starts off the book, and he's wondering who he should put, who wrote it, because he feels like it almost sounds like he's lost himself in his character kind of at some points, and he doesn't really know who his identity is, really, which is something that happens to some wrestlers. But I thought it was interesting, this way to start it off. And then the next chapter is like, it starts off with a promo that he did when he was going to wrestle Kenny Omega for the title, and I actually remembered that from watching it on wrestling TV on Dynamite, AEW. So that was pretty cool. Way to start it off. And then he just talks. It's just like the chapters are kind of random. They sound like in the order of when the events occurred. They just skip around. Just some of them are like diary entries almost. It just gives the date and where he was at. And then some of them are just about when he wrestled at a certain place or a certain promotion. It was interesting overall. And even at the beginning, he says something like, "If you're not a pro wrestling fan, then why are you reading this book?" You know. And he says that several times throughout it. And honestly, I don't think most people would enjoy it unless they were professional wrestling fans to begin with, as he states in his book. There's a lot of interesting tidbits about wrestling itself. And I'm going to read you a passage from the beginning of a chapter entitled A WWE Story on page 229. I've been gifted a moment just for me. I'm at peace and stillness and tranquility here. I'm underneath the ring at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The main event of WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view is about to be sent to the ring, a match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Roman Reigns defends against Seth Rollins. I've absconded by cover of a dozen emissaries wearing the same oversized WWE crew hooded sweatshirt as I am. We hurriedly rush from backstage, hoods up, crouched. The house lights are down. A video package plays on the screen as we circle the ring, seemingly performing routine maintenance. In less than 10 seconds, I've slid under the apron to safety. I watch the soles of the men's boots and the inch between the floor and the bottom of the apron as they complete the circle around the ring, retreating, the package delivered, their mission complete. I wish I could thank them. I'm greeted by Nick Daw, who tosses me a bottle of water. An unsung WWE crew soldier, Nick is stationed underneath the ring at every televised WWE event, tightening cables and making necessary repairs on the spot. He organizes the weapons and props stored under the ring, making sure they're in the right positions, easily accessible. Nick is in charge of finding the desired structural integrity of those big, blocky WWE announce desks when there is a big table bump, sometimes reinforcing them and sometimes sliding out from under the apron and strategically removing a piece or two from the framework, making the announce desk a live round ready to blow. Tell exactly what stunt you have in mind and he'll tune her to the sweet spot. And I thought that was interesting because I always wondered if there was someone underneath the rings in wrestling, and it turns out in WWE, for their televised events, they have someone down there. That was the most interesting part to me. There's also these jokes that he has in there, and he says, a joke Claudio told me, and at first I was like, who's Claudio? You know, but then after Forbidden Door, when that Claudio Castagnoli, the guy formerly known as Cesaro, came, then I figured that it must have been jokes that guy told Jon Moxley. But overall, it's pretty interesting. It sounds like Jon Moxley's lived an interesting life through his wrestling adventures. And one thing I do want to note is that he swears a lot. There's a ton of expletives in this. In each chapter, there's a bunch. I know in the part I read there wasn't any. But there's a lot of foul language, bad language in there. So if you have a problem with that, definitely don't want to read it because there's a lot of swear words in it. But I would say you can really hear that his voice through his writing. You can tell it was Jon Moxley from the way he does his promos in wrestling. You can tell it was the same guy who wrote this book. So I don't think it's ghostwritten or anything like that. But it's a good book. I enjoyed reading it. I got it on interlibrary loan from the Topeka Shawnee County Public Library. And interlibrary loans is when the library that you go to doesn't have the book, they can get it from another library who has it and check it out to you. So that's cool. So overall, I would say Jon Moxley's Mox by Jon Moxley, which is Jon Moxley's literary debut, I would say it's an enjoyable book for me as a wrestling fan, and I would say it's worth a library checkout if you're a wrestling fan. But if you're not a wrestling fan, I mean, you might like it, you might not. It might make you a wrestling fan. I don't know. It might make you think, oh, we're wrestlers or, degenerates or something. But I thought it was pretty interesting. Other stories that he told about that I thought were really interesting was when he talked about his childhood growing up in Cincinnati. That was interesting. And I thought when he was working at CZW, when he talked about it, it was interesting. And he was at the Tournament of Death where Nick Gage died for like 7 minutes or whatever. And then when he was talking about the Shield, that was kind of interesting. So it was a good book. I would recommend it if you're a wrestling fan, and if you're just a regular person, then you probably wouldn't be interested in it. But Mox by Jon Moxley is a decent book and worth a library checkout.